right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are live. I think this is our first true Facebook Live that we've done, so we're very excited to be sharing this with you. Today we are launching our 50th history book, which we are super excited about. This is 2 years in the making, so lots of love, lots of time has gone into this. For those of you that don't know, my name is Katie Motzinger. I'm the Director of Development and Marketing here at the Children's Attention Home. If you're not familiar with the Children's Attention Home, we provide a safe home, nurturing care, and life-changing services to children that are coming to us from foster care, as well as homeless youth here in the community. What we do is truly made possible by the community that we are a part of, and that is more evident than ever in the book and in the stories that we found as we were going through the history and the minutes and the notes and the interviews that got us here. So with me today, I have our Executive Director, Emily Parrish, and our board member and board treasurer for this coming year, Jimmy Autry, and we're going to be asking them some questions because they played integral roles in putting this together. And so thank you guys for being here.
Wonderful to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting. It is. So Jimmy, I'm going to start with you. Tell everybody listening, or watching rather, a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with the home, and kind of what your involvement is to this point.
Well, it's a great experience to move to Rock Hill. You see, I retired in 2017 and moved up here. People say, why did you move here? Well, the grandbabies are close by.
That's a good reason.
So I moved here to be close, but I wanted to get back involved. I changed chapters. I'm not working full-time, and I'm not volunteering full-time, but I wanted a place to volunteer. So I went to an organizational meeting called the York County Interagency Council, where lots of the nonprofits get together on a regular basis. And I introduced myself at a meeting, and after the meeting I said, I'm going to be looking for volunteer work. And sure enough, someone named Katie walked up and said, we might be able to find a place for you. It was a lot of fun because I'd already heard of the home through a friend of mine who told me a little bit about it as well. So for the first moment of, yes, I think I'd be interested, what I was looking for were volunteer opportunities where I could be a good match to what was being done. Obviously, the story of the home captured my heart and brought me there and made me a part of the organization. So I guess it was maybe a year later, perhaps not even a year, when in a planning meeting someone said, if only we had someone who could write the history of the home. Well, I hated to bring it up, but I had just finished a contract of writing a history book for another nonprofit organization. And when I brought that up, I kind of stepped into it that it's, well, this is going to be your job again. And it worked out. It turned out really good. It, obviously something I'm very interested in. I had literally closed the page just a month before on finishing up the second history book that I'd written, that I put together. And it just sounded like a great match and good fun, and it was better than I ever anticipated.
Well, we are so glad that you spoke up in that meeting. Because this truly has been a project that I know has been on the minds of a lot of people that have been involved with the home, and so your willingness to just dive in and take on what was a very big project, it means so much to so many people. And yes, I did not know when I asked you if you'd like to be involved with the home that later you'd be writing our history, but
so glad that you did.
Yes, so glad. So what, I guess, obviously you had the history of, or the past experience of writing histories, but taking on a whole new organization. So this is not one that you had really a lot of background with until that point. What kind of intrigued you about writing the history for the home, and what was the process like for pulling all that information together?
Well, I guess the greatest experience I'd like to share with anybody who's watching is I only wish you could have had the vision of this room filled with boxes as everything came from storage and we began to look through it to figure it out. In an ideal situation, what I've used in the past is my other nonprofit I just written was 80 years old. And anytime you look at records that are 80 years old, number one, you want to be able to find them. Number two, are they in shape that you can actually use them? And so going through the boxes and searching for minutes of past meetings, of events, of thank goodness the home had saved. Remember the really good scrapbooks from the early days? We had scrapbooks and so forth. So I wanted to find everything that I could find inside the history, which included a big storage place that had to be emptied out and searched through.
Yes.
Literally, this room was filled with boxes where we
Yes.
could hardly move around, and we found those and went through them. That was exciting, and because I'm a former journalist, newspaper reporter, going back in now to look in the old days, I used to have to flip through newspapers, and now everything's online, and so the newspaper searches were pretty much for 50 years, the searches were easy to take care of at home, online, to do searches of, obviously the papers here, the Charlotte paper had things, Rock Hill was probably number one, but the newspapers in Lancaster and Chester and other places found great results that I didn't find necessarily in everything wasn't repeated. So going through each of the newspapers was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
And just exciting time. It's like a discovery, a treasure hunt. Every box is a new treasure, and for me, a new story, and things that were going to find their way. I won't say that everything we ran into became part of the book, but the interest level stayed high because there were so many things. We still talk about some of the things that maybe didn't find their way into the book, but they were important to the life of the children's attention home.
Agree. I think we've had, like you said, so many conversations about, especially with this year and looking at just the trends of when the home has needs and how the community has stepped forward and how the community has stepped up to make sure that that the home continues and that we have the support we need to do what we need to do for the kids. It was incredibly evident throughout the book how there's just this cycle of growth of community support to make sure that our kids have what they need, I think, and just the stories of how creative people were, I think was remarkable. So what did you find most interesting? Like out of all these stories, what were some of the things or stories that stood out to you?
Well, there are a lot of them. There's so many great things that happened. What it took for us to move for the first home, the second home, the campus today, getting there is so very important. But because of my background and what I did in my life and my career, what I continue to be involved in, I'm just terribly thrilled about the kinds of fundraising activities that brought money to the home. Things just shocked me when I found stories or talked to people, talked to individuals to find out these stories about what may have happened. How did they raise money? And I understand golf tournaments and fashion shows and fundraising barbecues and those kind of things, but when you go back in the history of the home, you'll find the lady who swam Lake Wiley for 20 miles, swimming for 20 miles to raise money for the home. I hadn't really seen that before. Those who were willing to walk long distances, whatever it happened to be, one of the events to try to go from here to the Capitol in Columbia to raise money, to do those kind of things. The other one that caught my eye that I just will never get over is a car dealership in Lancaster who I think they were going out of business on purpose. It was not a new car dealership, it was a used car dealership. And it was just the time that they were done. They were finished and there were still cars on the lot. And so the next thing I see, I'm reading about the owner of the lot auctioning the cars off, auctioning the cars not for money for himself or his family, but the money to come to the children's attention home. Never seen that before. A singer, a high school person who sings and is well known, who proceeds from a CD, from a concert, just fabulous ways that people invested in themselves and their time and what it is that I do because I believe in what the home does for kids. And whether or not the middle school that raised funds year after year, all they want to do is to raise more this year than last year. Middle school kids who wanted to take care of other kids because they understood the process. I was enamored with all the methods of gathering funds to do fundraising. But I don't want to miss important things. There are a million other great ones along the way. One that sticks in my heart that I won't read specifically, but stays with me, is a trip to Charlotte for the kids back in the 70s. And the idea, okay, so they're going to go to try on clothes. I got that. I worked at a belt store growing up, and I understood that, trying on the clothes. But to think about kids and where they came from, had never seen an escalator before, and the chance to ride an escalator, they were going to a place they'd never seen. And so the exposure, not because they need to be exposed, but because every child deserves to know what life has to offer. And so a trip to Charlotte to ride the escalator, no, to get clothes, all the things along the way, eating in a cafeteria, things these kids just hadn't done before.
Yeah.
Meant a lot to me.
Yeah. I think just thinking back on the 6 years that I've been with the home, those are the things I think that stick with me too, just where they haven't had the opportunity to see or to do or to experience, and then for the first time when they do get to, their faces just light up, and the possibilities that really opens for these kids to see more of what's possible for their lives that they haven't gotten the chance to see before. So Emily, you were also part of the process. You and I both helped edit
We did.
the immense work that Jimmy had put together. So talk to me, well, first a little bit about your role with the home, but also your history with the home before we go into the book.
So I have been with the home for 16 years. So my history is, it feels long to me. Although in respect to the book, it's not that much, but it was very, it was interesting to be a part of this, particularly when we got into the early 2000s, because that's when I joined the home, and I started as a residential counselor, so I worked directly with the children. I've had an opportunity to have 8 different positions at the home. And so again, just reading this history and kind of joining it with my own history was very interesting, because you do, like Jimmy said, you see the sense of community, you see the sense of ownership that so many folks have for this place here in town that has given so much back to children in our community, that's given so much back to our town. And so I felt that from the moment that I joined the home, truly, and I tell the story all the time, but it did not make it into the book, but from the moment that I walked onto campus the first day for my interview, a child met me immediately and welcomed me and introduced me, and she sort of toured me. I'm not sure what I was supposed to be doing at that moment, but I was most definitely hanging out with one of the kids, and from that moment I felt, that's where I belonged, and it was just such a nice and welcoming place to be. And so I really think that a lot of the stories in this book share that and explain that in a way that sometimes is hard to convey for folks who've not had the privilege of being at the home for 50 years or 16 years or 6 years. So I've enjoyed this process very much. I very much enjoyed hearing about hot dog suppers and runs, and I think that there was a Tupperware party and a group of young children that made quilts, and again, just like you said, the amazing ways that folks came together to get back to the kids that needed that extra support. So that was more than what you asked, but but it all ties together.
Yeah,
so
it absolutely does. So you talked a little bit about the themes that stood out to you. So what did you find, what was the most interesting story for you that you discovered? Because being here 16 years, you've heard a lot of the history probably through the grapevine or through different documents. So what was the thing that surprised you or stood out to you among the rest?
I would say that nothing surprised me, but I think it's probably the opposite. I think everything is surprising, because we say it all the time, every day is essentially a new day. You never really know what you're gonna encounter, and I really very much enjoyed going back through the old documents. In fact, at some point I think I was taking off some of that because I couldn't get anything done, because I just read the old logbooks and the files because it was so interesting. And I love the community piece of it, but what stuck out to me was the stories of the children and some of the old case notes, because again, when I started, I was doing case notes, and so those have not changed so much over the last 50 years. And so I remember, and I don't think it made it into the book, but again, it was one of those things that just stuck, was one of the very old files from, I think, the first house. And it was 2 twin babies, and it was baby A and baby B for, confidentiality purposes, and just the stories about, baby A was up during the night and baby B slept very good, and just the clear love and devotion that the staff members had for those babies in their care. And just the way that even after all this time, after all these years, and those babies are grown now, but it still transfers, through those case notes.
And for what most people don't realize, in the early days, that the house parents lived in the house,
That's right.
They ran the place.
That's
So
right.
it's like as much 7 by 24 as you could imagine,
Yeah.
which is beyond my imagination about baby A and baby B. They knew the sleep
Oh, they
habits
did.
because they lived it. They
They
were
did.
there all the time.
They did.
I remember one of the notes of one of the house parents along the way in the early days saying, we go on vacation, we take the 6 kids or 7 kids with us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Vacation is everybody.
That's it. That's it.
7 by 24.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to interview the late Art and Diane Whitesell, who were house parents. They were the first house parents to come in who actually had a child of their own. And so they talked about kind of figuring that out because the board they weren't sure at the time like how that was going to work with another child in the house that was biological to the house parents versus having the children that are at the home, essentially, in foster care in a larger setting. And so just how they navigated that, how the challenges that they had, the vacations that they went on, and it was fascinating to see how much they loved those kids. I mean, just like you hear people who are foster parents or adoptive parents today talk about how much they love these kids as their own. Just hearing their stories and hearing the challenges that they faced and the new days that they faced. But when the home was very new and how it's changed since then, but just like you said, the devotion of their time and the investment that they had with it being on all the time. Yeah, just what a commitment that would have been and was from so many people, I think is remarkable, for sure. So I wanted to ask you to pick a favorite part to read, and I did tell you ahead of time so that I didn't.
So I'm
prompt you that you
prepared.
flipped to the book.
So I am prepared, and I do have just a couple of sentences, and I will tell you just a quick background. Our preface of the book is written by a former resident of the home. It's also a resident that I had the privilege and have the privilege of knowing personally. So she and I, she was one of the first residents that I had the privilege of meeting when I came to the children's home, and she and I had a very fun and unique type of relationship while she was at the home, and we've certainly remained in touch today. And she continues to be an inspiration to me. How she parents her own children now is incredible, and I think it's a testament to who she is as a person. And so I'm honored to be able to read this section of what she had shared with us and about her time at the home. Okay. It's been many years since I've said goodbye to CAH, but I still hold them close to my heart and cheer them on as they make life better for the kids who walk through their doors today. I still have staff and volunteers who I remain close to, and they still go above and beyond to make sure I'm doing okay, even though their work is technically done. CAH provided me something that I lacked: family, safety, stability, and a loving environment. It is because of CAH and the people within it who never gave up on me that I thrive today and I'm able to raise my own children well. I'll never be able to express how thankful I am to each person who essentially molded me into the person I am today. And that is from Rebecca King, again, a former resident of the home and a dear friend of ours still today.
Well, that's a great example of the other kind of research that we did. The one that I didn't talk about was, and I did all the don't talk to people kind of research.
We didn't quarantine you on purpose.
Well, not on purpose. They locked me in here with the boxes. But I thought about the Louise Pettis files that were downtown. I never realized I was going to find things from people who lived in the town who served as board members, who left their papers behind. And I found those at the Louise Pettis. And I found other research where an Optimus Club and their 50, 60, 70-year history, and they talked about all through the years their support of the home. And I found things like that. But different from that, like I said, I had the non-speaking, but we did other kinds of research as well where we talked to real people. Real people who were here, who were actually lived here, and others who worked here as well. You got the chance to talk to real live, you mentioned one already, but you talked to real live people with real live experiences, which made their way into the book too.
I did. I had the honor and the privilege of talking with Betty Porterfield and her daughters Libby and Kathy, and got to talk with Fran Morris and had done a little bit of talking with some of her kids we were fortunate to actually have her granddaughter intern with us a couple years ago. And also Patsy Freeman. So her husband Dan Freeman, also one of the founders, and Reverend Porterfield, Betty's husband, one of the founders. And to hear the heart that got the home started, and I never had the privilege of knowing Reverend Porterfield before he passed away. I've only heard stories, but to hear his family talk about him and his commitment to the home, and I mean, this is probably like a grandiose comparison maybe, but it reminded me a little bit of the Billy Graham kind of effect, where he had so much in his ministry that he was doing, and it was because of his wife at home and his family that he was able to be out doing all the things he was doing to help so many people. And that was the vibe, I guess is the only word I can think of, or the feeling that I got from his family. And just to hear their stories about being involved. Kathy talked about in the second house how they had their assignment was the mantelpiece, and her and her husband to get that done. And Libby talked about how they were involved with the kids, and they would play with the kids, and they had them over at their house, and or they would go and stay some weekends to give the house parents some relief. And Betty shared all kinds of stories about just when Bob came home and there was a new project, or just getting the home started and doing the research on how do we get this started? What does this look like? Patsy also talked about that with, and you'll read it in the book, so I don't want to give all of it away, but, and you can also check out, we did a 50-year history video where these interview clips were shared. But it was fascinating to go back and hear their personal accounts of their family's involvement in the investment of these men and women, and in their pursuit of providing this safe place for these kids. Fran talked about how she really enjoyed going and buying ice cream for the kids and spending time reading to some of the little ones, and she has had a tremendous amount of time invested in helping support the home, find support for the home, fundraising for the home, and also just volunteering, particularly years ago when her kids were younger. And so it was just such an honor to have that time, to have those memories shared.
It struck me about how much they gave and gave and gave of themselves, of their time. These people, by the way, the names you named all happen to be the names of our cottages, aren't they? There's a reason that the cottages have those names now. But it struck me in doing the research and doing the book as well, that for them to come back into a group with a positive attitude, to come back from serving kids, when you would literally have one of the house parents say, we're down to $27 in the bank account. There was never a give up. There was never a can't do it. There was there were tough days. There were tough times. We are so blessed today because people continue to support us. We're not blessed because anything we do, it's because the community continues to come forward and support and support. But I remember writing that literally a house parent wrote down, we're down to $27 in the account. And how do you get up the next day gung-ho ready to go because you believe in what we believe in?
Yeah. And that's, that part struck me too, was it when there were tough times, and there were, and it's here, and they talked very candidly about some of the hard times, but when they were, they pulled on the community, and they told the community, and every single time, it was just amazing to me how folks immediately rallied right around the children's home and the kids that were being served and found a way. I mean, every single time. And so I think that's amazing.
I remember the one too when one of the house parents said she made the mistake of telling the community they needed clothes. Suddenly there's so many clothes you can't move. The house is not just so big, and she kind of in her notes goes through to say, we took what the kids needed, and then we moved all the rest of those clothes to another nonprofit that could use them. She said, you got to be careful what you ask for. The community will come through. And we have to ask. We still ask today because the community does come through in a big way. The Lord's blessing is a whole lot more than just what's needed. It's what else is, how big can it grow?
Yeah. Well, and the similarities between that and now are striking. In fact, we have a baby recently, and we needed diapers or
Mhm.
something baby related, and we were very careful about the ask because it was the same thing. We knew if we put it out on Facebook,
Here comes the,
we were
the
going to
truckload
have,
of
that's
diapers
right,
backing
a
up
U-Haul
to-
of diapers coming in.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, it was
we were very
remarkable.
blessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in being part of that today, like you said, and comparing it to what we've seen in years past, like I guess it was 2016 or 2017 when we had the group from Charleston come up the first time, and we put out a need for snacks and water and paper products to help us serve them while they were with us in addition to our own kids. And we had such an incredible response in 24 hours from people who were preparing for their own, hurricane action plan.
Right.
That still showed up for the kids, and that it speaks volumes of the community's heart for what we do. So I wanted to let you know how you can get a copy because this is great, but we don't want to share. We don't want to keep this to ourselves. We want to share it with you. So one of the ways that you can get your copy of the book is to become a monthly donor. Becoming a monthly donor at $25 a month we would send you a gift copy for your support and for being part of what we do, or a one-time gift of $300, either one of those, and we would happily send you a gift copy of the book. It really is fascinating to read, and we're so grateful. Those of you that already give at $25 a month, you'll be getting your copy here soon. But we would love for you to be part of what it is that we do and continue to be part of making it possible for us to provide this vital care for the kids. And this is only going to grow. The need is only growing, and we've talked about that over this past year that's been challenging, and I don't want to delve into all of the COVID stuff, but looking ahead, just knowing the growing need that's out there for our kids in foster care, our homeless youth, and just kids in our community who really continue to need safe shelter. 50 years later, the kids still have this need. There are still families that need a place that can help their child while they get themselves back on their feet, or that need that extra support. So we invite you to become part of this with us, and we're grateful that you guys have listened today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. You can email us, you can call us. Our phone number is listed on our Facebook page, but it's also 803-328-8871. And our website is attentionhome.org, and there you can find all of the ways that you can be part of this mission that so many have been a part of for 50 years. Thank you guys both for being here. Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I just want to be sure they understand the history is there, but we found lots and lots of photos and clippings, and this is a full color book. It's there. It's just terribly interesting. It's a lot of fun to be a part of it, and thank you for the opportunity. But I'm now ready for a lot of people to share. I think they're going to love it.
Yes,
I hope
me
so.
too.
Yeah.
It really is fun to read. It really was. It was fun to be a part of, and it's fun to see the finished product. And it really is nice. I mean, what you're saying, Jimmy, is true. It's a good book. It's a good keepsake, and it's a really nice representation of what the home has been able to do in our community for the last 50 years.
Yeah, and we look forward to another 50.
Yes.
So again, $25 a month or a $300 gift, and we will send you your gift copy. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you again soon. I'm going to log off, which means I have to walk over there. So this nice little closing. Have a great day.